Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here, where all of us as film fans and entertainment fans get to talk about our favorite things in the world. We get to have some discussion about comic book movies and sci-fi and dramas and musicals. Greatest Showman is coming out. It's a great time to be a movie fan. Hey, listen, guys, here's how today's show is going to go. I have picked out 5 topics that you guys have selected, that you guys have sent in to me. Here's how you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show. You simply email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. Make sure you put that word topic in the subject line. If you don't put the word topic in the subject line, I ain't gonna see it. And also, guys, as always, keep your emails to 90 words or less. And good morning to all you guys who are in the chat board already here, getting ready to talk some cool movies. And I got a little bit of a confession to make before we get started. I think I may have a problem. And, you know, acknowledging a problem, I hear, is the first step to going forward and growing as a person and overcoming your problems. But last night, I think it was around 5:30 in the evening, I get a text message from my buddy Soul. And my buddy Soul is the chief executive over at the Fine Brothers. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with the Fine Brothers. Anyway, I know Benny and Rafi are really cool guys. My buddy Soul, he's one of my best friends in LA. He texted me last night and goes, "Hey, so you want to see Justice League for a 5th time tonight?" And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, yep, let's go. And ran off to the theater. And last night I went to go see Justice League. Yes, for a 5th time. 5th time I went to go see Justice League last night. And you know what? I had just as good of a time as I did before. You know what's, here's the funny thing about Justice League for me. For me, it's every time I see it now, I find that the things in the movie that did not work for me, I'm finding are annoying me more. But the things that did work in the movie for me, I'm liking even more. I'm finding like my experience with Justice League, the more I watch it, is getting more and more intense, both on the negative and the positive side, which means overall, I mean, obviously, I'm still going back to see it again and again. I still quite enjoy it. I think the good outweighs the bad in the film, and I had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, that's 5 times now. Maybe I'll go see it again tonight. I don't know. We'll have to just wait and see. I'm sure Anne doesn't want me to go watch it again tonight, but you know, a guy's got to do what a guy's got to do. When Justice League is on the big screen, maybe you just got to go and see it. Because who knows for how much longer we're going to get DCEU films. But that's a topic I'm sure we'll get to in just a second. Now listen, for those of you guys who are now watching live, after I get through all the pre-selected topics, I'm going to go to you guys who are watching live right now and take your live questions. Now, how are you going to get a live question on the show? Near the end of the show, I'll tell you when to start tweeting, but start tweeting to me at John Campea. I'll take as many tweets as I can. Maybe you'll see your tweet at the bottom of the screen here, but guys, do me a favor, keep your tweets as short as possible. It just makes life a lot easier for me if you keep your tweets as short as possible. All right. With all that out of the way, let's get started with the first official topic today. And the first official topic today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Jeff Bingham, who writes, "Hey John, I'm surprised you haven't commented on the trailer for A Quiet Place yet. What did you think of it? As someone who's not a horror guy, this is the first trailer since the one for Get Out to truly get me curious about a horror movie." Well, thanks a lot for the question, Jeff. And for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, A Quiet Place is a brand new horror movie that's coming out. They just dropped the first trailer for it a couple days ago with John Krasinski, who, of course, was from The Office, and his real-life wife, Emily Blunt, which you can see right here. And I'm still surprised at how many people don't realize those two are married in real life. So John Krasinski played Jim on The Office. I love him. I think he is charming. I think he's got a Paul Rudd kind of charm to him. Like, he doesn't have the same comedy stylings. Like, John Krasinski seems to have more of a straight man kind of comedy, and it works great, especially if you saw The Office. You know how great that works for him. But he's got the charm of a Paul Rudd, you know? You just can't help but like the guy and want to cheer for him. And I'm honestly really surprised, considering how popular and how good he was in The Office, that he didn't instantly transition to being a big movie star. And I remember the movie that kind of killed it for him. And that was that one he did with George Clooney. I think it was Leatherheads, where it was like football in the 30s or something like that. And that was him. It was John Krasinski and George Clooney starring movie, right? And that was going to be John Krasinski's big breakout, and the movie fell totally flat. And then we never really saw him again, except popping up in bit parts here and there. 13 Hours, then he emerges again, which he was great. And I'm a big fan. And obviously, what can you say about Emily Blunt? She's just amazing. Anyway, so I'm like you. Like, I like a good horror movie, but I'm not a horror guy. Like, I don't keep my finger on the pulse of everything going on in the horror industry or anything like that. But I, like everybody else, I like a good horror movie. Watch the trailer for A Quiet Place. It seems fresh and original and weird as hell and creepy as hell. And it was great for a first trailer because I have no idea. Like, I already got the idea. What's the idea of the movie? I got it. Like, some trailers today, like Justice League or Blade Runner 2049, the trailers never even give you an idea about what this movie's about. I got what the movie was basically about. But at the same time, they never show us what it is they're hiding from. It's such a different kind of an idea for a horror movie, at least from my perspective. I've never seen anything like it. So I was instantly intrigued. So I'm intrigued because of the talent who's involved. I thought the trailer was killer. If you have not seen the trailer for A Quiet Place yet, I highly recommend you check. It's on YouTube, obviously. Just type in A Quiet Place trailer, watch it. I enjoyed it a lot. What did you guys think of the trailer for A Quiet Place? Jump into the comments section and leave your thoughts below. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Nathan Henderson. And Nathan Henderson writes, "Hi, John. Love the show. Thank you so much, Nathan. My question is about Vince Vaughn. He is a good comedian actor, but can he be serious or dramatic? I watched him in Hacksaw Ridge, and it seemed like he comes across as funny in a serious movie." Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And you know what? I don't know, man. I loved Vince Vaughn in Hacksaw Ridge. Now, I actually thought Hacksaw Ridge should have won Best Picture. I mean, I was just floored by that movie. I love that movie so much. And Vince Vaughn is one of the big reasons why. Andrew Garfield, oh, he was so good. That Garfield is going to have more than one Oscar on his mantle by the time he retires. This dude is so crazy, stupid, talented. But anyway, so he's in this movie with Vince Vaughn. And Vince Vaughn, I thought, was great. I really like Vince Vaughn. And of course, I've got a poster up here for it now, but he's got this other movie that's out right now, Brawl in Cell Block 99, which he was really good in. And you know what? Even though True Detective Season 2 was, I mean, a lot of people trash on it, wasn't anywhere near as good as the one. Vince Vaughn's performance in that, straight, serious, dramatic. I thought he was incredible. Actually, I thought most of the performances, even though the story wasn't as good in True Detective Season 2, I thought the performances were almost on par. Performance-wise from True Detective Season 1, I thought Vince Vaughn was fantastic. I thought Colin Farrell was fantastic. I thought Rachel McAdams was fantastic. I thought Taylor Kitsch was fantastic. I thought they were all good, but Vince Vaughn really stood out to me as a guy who brought really heavy, great chops to it. I was super impressed with him. And here's the funny thing. When we think of Vince Vaughn, we think of him in terms of the comedy guy. We think of him for understandable reasons. We think of him in, Wedding Crashers, The Intern, or whatever. And the reality is kind of like sports scouting. Early in his career, he was pegged by a lot of people as being one of the next big dramatic breakout stars. Early in his career, there was a lot of casting agents, stuff like that, who were kind of pegging him as one of the next big dramatic stars. And he really was very talented in comedy, and then comedy hit for him, and then he just did comedy. Now we think of Vince Vaughn when we think of comedy. But he has great dramatic chops, and I have a feeling we're going to see him get more into that in the latter stages of his career. I think you're going to see him get more towards drama. And I think we could see Oscar nominations in his future. Not this year, but I think, I just think he's that level of actor. I think he's really good dramatically. Here's an interesting Vince Vaughn story. So, couple of years ago, Vince Vaughn had that movie coming out called The Delivery Man. I don't know if you guys remember that. Chris Pratt was in it with him. So this one time, Chris Pratt and Vince Vaughn come into my studio, and they hung out there for about 2 or 3 hours. We did some interviews about Delivery Man, but then they also used our office to do a Q&A on Twitter with fans and all that kind of stuff. But both Pratt and Vince Vaughn couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't have been more great. And they were especially both really great to Anne, which I always appreciate. Anne was there, who is my wife. Anne was there with us, and they were both so nice and so sweet to her. Anyway, fast forward a couple years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years later. And this is last year, maybe even only 8 months ago. But Anne now works for Hasbro, and Anne has this big Hasbro event at this hotel. And I can't remember if it was in Malibu or somewhere like that. So she's in this hotel and she's with a bunch of people from Hasbro. And they're in the foyer of this hotel. And Vince Vaughn comes walking through the foyer of the hotel. And of course, all of Anne's Hasbro co-workers are like, oh my gosh, that's Vince Vaughn, that's Vince Vaughn. And Vince Vaughn looks over and says, hey, Anne. And he goes over and talks to Anne, to which, first of all, I mean, that's remarkable that he would even remember her, because I'm sure he comes across multiple people like that all the time. But Anne's Hasbro co-workers were like, oh my God, Anne knows Vince Vaughn, which was hilarious. And really, she'd only met him once. But just super, really nice guy that he would do that. Just really, really nice that he would do that. So there's a nice Vince Vaughn is a good guy kind of story for you out there right now. But anyway, yeah, I dig him as a dramatic actor. I think he's got chops, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to do in the future. All right, let's move on now to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us. This is an interesting one that I get all the time. Ricardo Ramirez writes, hey, John, with Justice League not making $100 million on opening weekend and the general audience not going out to see the film, do you think this could be the sign of the general audience getting fatigued of comic book movies? You know, I swear, ever since like the second X-Men movie, whether I've been at the movie blog or whether I've been on AMC or I was with Complex or whatever, I seem to be constantly getting flooded with questions about comic book fatigue, comic book fatigue, comic book fatigue. I'm getting fatigued of comic book fatigue, to be honest with you. But it's just a question everybody's always asking, right? And so Justice League comes, massively underperforms. I mean, I still can't get over this graphic. Every DCEU movie to date, how much they all made opening weekend, and look at what's at the bottom of the list. Justice League is I still can't wrap my head around that. Justice League, Justice frickin' League is the lowest opening weekend total of any DCEU film. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around that. Anyway, so the question is, so many comic book movies now. No, Justice League, is that because of comic book fatigue? Okay, let's take a breath. What I find a lot of people do, and when I say a lot of people, I mean like most of us. I'm sure I do this sometimes. You probably do this sometimes. So it's a common problem. What a lot of us often do is when we're thinking about an issue, we pick out an example that is by far the rare example and try to use that rare example of proof that things work this way, right? And which means you're ignoring 97% of the other proof that point the other way, but you pick out the one thing and go, see? And Justice League right now in the year of 2017 is that Justice League is a failure when it comes to its own standards and things like that. It may even end up breaking even or being profitable. It might. But as far as what a Justice League movie should have been, it's the Avengers of the DCEU. I mean, anyway, so a lot of people now point at Justice League, and I've been getting flooded with tweets and emails saying, this is comic book fatigue, John. This is superhero movie fatigue. Okay. Let's take a step back, and let's look at all the superhero movies of 2017, all right? Now, to claim superhero fatigue is just saying, hey, the audience is getting tired of superhero movies. That's suggesting this, a downward trajectory, right? Because after all, look at Justice League. It didn't make much money, therefore, downward trajectory. Hold on to your horses for a second. Let's start with this. If we're going to talk about trajectory and things like that, let's look at Wonder Woman. Let's start with Wonder Woman, right? A superhero, I think it's the only superhero origin movie this year, okay? Wonder Woman comes out. Now, this is only domestic numbers, but the international numbers, the worldwide numbers all fall in line with this. And oh, look at that. Wonder Woman, a superhero origin film, is the highest grossing superhero origin film of all time. Does that sound like comic book fatigue? Is that a downward trajectory? Wonder Woman comes out, the biggest superhero origin film ever done. Boom. Is that a downward trajectory? Is that comic book fatigue? No, that's evidence to the contrary. Okay, well, let's go on to the next big movie that year. What about Wolverine? Or Logan, I should say, right? Well, we've now had 3 Wolverine films. We had X-Men Origins Wolverine, we had The Wolverine, now we got Logan. Look at this. Oh, look, Logan, this year's movie, is by far the biggest Logan movie we ever had. It is by far the biggest Wolverine movie we've ever had. So again, I'm left to ask, what's the trajectory? Is the trajectory doing this? No. We saw with Wonder Woman, biggest comic book origin movie of all time. Trajectory's doing this. Logan, okay, look at the series. Oh, it's the biggest Logan. It's the biggest Wolverine movie ever. Okay. All right, well, what about Spider-Man Homecoming? Well, if you want to take the last previous two Spider-Man films, we had The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and oh, look at that. Spider-Man Homecoming comes out, beats the last one, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, by over $170 million. So, I mean, if you want to take the last three Spider-Man movies, their trajectory is going up. That's not fatigue. That's trajectory. So, Wonder Woman, trajectory up. Logan, trajectory up. Spider-Man, trajectory up. Okay, what about Thor? Okay, so Thor, third film in the Thor franchise. Oh, and maybe if I clicked on the right one, if I can even find the right one. There we go. Thor, the third film in the franchise. And again, this is just domestic numbers, but the worldwide numbers are in the same parity here, okay? Look at that. The newest Thor film is the biggest grossing Thor film of all time, out of all three. Is that fatigue? Is that trajectory going down? No, that's once again the trajectory going up. Wonder Woman, trajectory up. Spider-Man, trajectory up. Thor, trajectory up. Wolverine, Logan, trajectory up. What about Guardians of the Galaxy? Okay, well, Guardians of the Galaxy came out, made $773 million worldwide. The sequel came out and made almost $100 million more than that. Is that fatigue? Is that trajectory going down? Nope. Once again, that's trajectory up. So we have, what do we got here? Five or six? Five major comic book superhero movies this year. All right. Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Guardians, Thor, Justice League. Oh, and Logan. So there, yeah, six. Five of them are on strong upward trajectories. 5 out of the 6 of them are strong upward positive trajectories. One of them, Justice League, which has a whole bunch of drama and issues and baggage that it brings along with it, but one of them did this. 5 did this. So now I'm just asking you, rationally, let's take a step back. Do we look at these numbers? Do we look at these facts and this data and say, oh, there's clearly superhero movie fatigue? Bull. We clearly see upward trajectory, trajectory. The genre is healthy. The genre is thriving. We see these franchises hitting their biggest numbers ever, and then we hit one road bump with Justice League. But, as I said at the beginning, what we as people and as film fans quite often do is we pick the one thing, even if it's in the minority, and say, there's proof. No, there's proof. There's an exception. Here's what's really going on. This is the norm. Here's the exception. That's what we have here. So, no, I don't believe at all that the Justice League struggles have anything to do with comic book fatigue. If that were the case, Wonder Woman would not have been the #1 superhero origin film of all time. Logan wouldn't have been the highest grossing Wolverine film of all time. Spider-Man Homecoming would not have come out as another reboot and beat the previous 2 Spider-Man Homecomings. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 wouldn't have beat the box office for the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thor Ragnarok wouldn't have been the highest grossing Thor movie of all time. If there was that, we would have seen it affect the other films as well. But what we've seen in the larger sample size is that the opposite is actually true. The comic book genre is still very alive, very kicking, and thriving still. Justice League is definitely a road bump. Make no mistake, it is. But I think all the proof, all the data, all the facts point to a healthy, thriving comic book genre right now. We don't want to see 3 or 4 of these Justice League stumbles in a row. Absolutely not. But if you're going to sit back and look at 2017 and you want to ask the question, do the facts, do the data point towards comic book movie fatigue amongst audiences or not? Clearly, the overwhelming amount of evidence points towards that. Nope, not yet. There's not. Try again next year, because I feel like every year for the past 7 years, people's like, oh, this is the year the comic book movie fatigue sets in. And then we get more and more box office records. And the next year, this is the year the comic book movie fatigue sets in. And they keep getting big blockbuster after big blockbuster. And then the next year, no. I know I said the last couple of years, but this is the year the comic book movie fatigue sets in. So no, I believe when we step back, look at the data, look at the evidence, there's no worry about comic book movie fatigue at this point. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. Let's move on now to the next one. And the next one comes to us all the way from Michael Bedard, who writes, what do you think Warner Brothers should do? My opinion, start with Flashpoint as the next movie after Justice League, and then reboot the franchise by making Flashpoint. What do you think? Well, here's the thing. If you guys have been in any kind of online chat boards or forums or comment sections like on the YouTube channel here or whatever, you guys will know that what is constantly being brought up now is Flashpoint, 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 Flashpoint. And the notion that we'll just use Flashpoint to set everything straight. A couple things. One, if you know the story of Flashpoint, you know that's not what really essentially Flashpoint is for. But I mean, hey, I say all the time, Captain America Civil War was not like the comic. And that movie's awesome. X-Men Days of Future Past is awesome, but that was nothing like the comic. You can do Flashpoint and take lots of liberties. Okay, you can do that. That's fine. But here's what I'm wondering at this point. If you're Warner Brothers and DC, and you're like, we just put out Justice Frickin' League, and it was the lowest opening we've ever done. Do you want to make another movie in the DCU that general audiences aren't even familiar with? The general movie-going audience has no idea what Flashpoint is. And if Justice League is successful, that's okay. You can do it and do it successfully. But with Justice League struggling, do you want to do another DCEU film with a storyline that most people aren't familiar with just to, reset your universe? Guess what? Spider-Man just rebooted. It's just on its third incarnation now. Spider-Man is on its third incarnation and thriving. Did they have to do some kind of, let's bring in a time travel character to The Amazing Spider-Man so then they can explain in a movie why they're rebooting? No, they just rebooted. Just like that. Just reboot. That's all. You don't have to make a movie and sacrifice hundreds of millions of dollars, because I guarantee you, they put out a Flashpoint movie right now, that movie's not making money. So, I'm looking at the results of Justice League, and I was dying to see a Flashpoint movie, but at this point, it's just not a good business decision. Why not just reboot? If Warner Brothers reboots, that's a huge if. We're just talking theoreticals here, okay? Let's be clear about that. If Warner Brothers decides to reboot, you don't need to do a Justice League movie to explain the reboot. The Hulk didn't do that. Hulk just rebooted. Spider-Man just rebooted, and then it just rebooted again. And guess what? It's been incredibly successful. No, the audience wasn't trembling in the corners like, oh no, I don't understand what's happening. No, audiences understand reboots. Audiences can wrap their heads around that. They get it. They're okay. You just reboot. So I just don't see that there's a need to do. I think as comic book fans would love to see that, yes. But if you're an executive of a studio, is that really the right business thing to do? Let's put another $300 million, counting marketing and all that kind of stuff, into a Flashpoint movie that we have no reason to believe anybody's going to go to see. To do something we don't need to do, which is explain a soft reboot when we could just easily snap our fingers and just do a hard reboot. And I'm hearing some people saying Warner Brothers can't do that. It'll turn off all the audience and everybody will be confused. Show me something to back that up. Hulk rebooted? No problem. Spider-Man has done it a couple times. No problem. They did it with Superman. No problem. They did it with Superman a couple of times. No problem. They have a Flash on TV and in the movies, something that people melted their brains over. I remember when they said, yeah, they're going to have Flash in the movies. Oh, so it's going to be the Flash from TV? Nope, it's going to be a separate character. People going, the audience won't understand. The audience won't get it. It'll cause mass confusion. I don't see fires burning in the street. Everybody seems to be okay. Everybody seemed to get it. Didn't seem to be that big of a problem. It's okay. And here's the thing. This is the really good position that Warner Brothers is in. Warner Brothers, and this is coming from a guy who just went to go see Justice League for a 5th time last night, but Warner Brothers has the most iconic superheroes. I mean, you got Batman and you got Superman. You're okay. You can reboot, you can do all that kind of stuff, and you're fine because you got Batman and you got Superman. And you can start from there and then build out your cinematic universe around them. Because here's my big thing right now is that right now it is tough to build on such a bad foundation. And their foundation right now is 4 out of 5 films that have been incredibly divisive with the critics, incredibly divisive with audiences, and haven't reached, other than Suicide Squad, which overachieved, but haven't reached their box office potential. I mean, Batman versus Superman, that should have been a $2 billion movie. Or a $2 billion movie. Batman versus Superman should have been a $2 billion movie. Justice League could have been, let me change should have been to could have been. Batman vs. Superman could have potentially been a $2 billion movie. Justice League had the potential to be a $2 billion movie. Certainly a $1.5 billion movie. Certainly. You go back 3 years when they're announcing Justice League and all this kind of stuff, and you tell somebody this movie might not even cross the $1 billion mark, you would have been tarred and feathered and stoned in the streets. And yet here we are. Right? So here we got this foundation now that you've got all these underlying problems. People didn't like it. Is it safe? Think of it in terms of construction. If you have this really soft, mushy, unreliable foundation, do you just want to keep building new floors and new floors on top of that building that's sitting on a really shaky foundation that could just crumble out? I don't know. I got to tell you, I think there's a way to keep the DCEU going. I do. I think there are ways to do it. But right now, as a fan, I think my smart money is on, don't do that though, just reboot this thing. But it does present some other problems if they do it that way, which we'll get to here in just a second. But what do you guys think? Do you think that Flashpoint is the way to go about it? Do you think a Flashpoint thing, use it as an adjustment tool? Or do you, like me, think that's not even necessary? Just take Flashpoint out of it, snap your fingers, and reboot. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm open to ideas. I can totally have my mind changed. Let me know what you guys think. All right, we move on now to the final emailed in topic today. And the final emailed in topic today comes to us from Dustin Smith. And Dustin Smith writes, "Hey, John, with DC possibly rebooting, I am worried about Wonder Woman, the first DC film I loved since the Dark Knight trilogy, and was excited for another. Would or should DC reboot it despite its success, or try to salvage it?" And you know what? Wonder Woman, it's a fantastic question. It is a fantastic question. Because Wonder Woman right now, the Wonder Woman is a problem. And it's the good kind of problem because it's your one big success. The critics liked it. The audience liked it. It became the biggest box office-wise, biggest superhero origin movie of all time. It made over $800 million. It's not going to be the biggest box office comic book film of the year, but it's one of the biggest box office comic book successes of the year, and may even end up making more than Justice League. Who would have thought that? Because here's the thing. You take Wonder Woman out of the equation, and then it's a no-brainer decision. You reboot the DCEU. You take Wonder Woman out of this equation, it's not even a debate. It's not even a discussion. You reboot the DCEU. Simple, easy, boom, yeah, just no problem. Reboot. But there's a problem. You do have one film in there that is successful across the board. Financially, with the critics, and with the audience. Wonder Woman. Do you really, what do you do now with that? That is the one big wrench in the gears here, is wondering, what do you do? Suddenly now, just rebooting the universe is not such an easy proposition. And that's why the execs at Warner Brothers make the big bucks, because these are big, difficult issues from a financial point of view and from a movie studio point of view. I mean, it's all first world problems, but we're talking about things in the movie world. So this is a big issue in our little movie world, right? What do you do with it? Because on one hand, You can't, a guy like me is thinking, you can't just continue on with the DCU the way it is. For the future success of this franchise, you have too much high potential, you have too many great characters. You got to reboot. It would break my heart that we're not going to have Ben Affleck as Batman anymore. It would break my heart not to have Henry Cavill as Superman anymore. All that kind. Ray Fisher just did a great job playing Cyborg. Ezra Miller, I thought, did a fantastic job playing Flash. All that kind of stuff would break my heart. But you got to reboot it. You have to reboot it and build a better foundation. But on the other hand, you have this big potential franchise in your one character, Wonder Woman, that was a big hit with everybody. What the hell do you do with that? You can't just throw that away. You cannot just throw Wonder Woman 2 away. You can't do it. So what do you do? And I've got to tell you guys, I don't know. I honestly don't know what the correct answer is. Now, some people have been suggesting to me, and I know some people kind of screaming this in the chat board too. There is the notion that, look, we've already heard that Wonder Woman 2 is not taking place in modern day. It's going to be like happening in the 80s or something like that, right? So, just like the first Wonder Woman movie was treated, other than the little note she gets from Bruce Wayne at the beginning of the movie, the first Wonder Woman movie is pretty much totally isolated from the rest of the DCEU. It is truly a standalone film. Wonder Woman 2 seems like it's being set up to truly be a standalone film. Again, so maybe you can still do Wonder Woman 2, treat it as a complete standalone film, and start the process of rebuilding and retooling and removing ahead with a new DCEU. Maybe there's a way to do that. And then maybe finish off a Wonder Woman trilogy and then end that series, then start a new Wonder Woman character in the new DCEU that you have going. But that's the only way I can see this working right now. But then again, I'm sure there's other ways I'm just not thinking of right now. So once again, the way I think you do it is you restart the DCEU without a Wonder Woman character. You keep the current Wonder Woman movies going as standalone movies. So you do Wonder Woman 2 set in the 80s and then do one more after that, again treated as a standalone film to finish off the trilogy. And then you introduce a new Wonder Woman character in the DCEU now that you've built a solid foundation and move from there. That's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head as being a good way to handle this situation. But I'm sure you guys probably have some much better ideas than me. And I'm sure the Warner Brothers executives probably have some much better ideas as well. But it is funny when you get something that is so successful and that's the thing that's your problem. Because once again, if it wasn't for this damn movie, rebooting the DCEU is the simplest and easiest decision in the world. But things like this make that a problem, which is really interesting. All right, guys, listen, that will do it for the pre-selected emailed in questions now. What I'm going to do next is go to you guys who are watching live. And we're getting close to 3,000 people of you in the live chat board. So we're going to go to you guys watching live. I'm going to take your questions via Twitter. Once again, tweet in your comments, opinions, questions, whatever to @JohnCampea. And again, guys, please keep your tweets as short as possible because I'm having some technical issues anyway. I can't get people who write big, long tweets. I can't get them on the screen. So please keep your tweets as short as possible. Now, before we get to that, it is, of course, time for my daily shameless plug of my Patreon campaign, which is, of course, my Patreon supporters are the reasons I'm even able to do this show in the first place. So here we go. Check this out. We'll be right back in 1 minute. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/JohnCampea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back All right, and we're back. And again, a special thank you to all of you guys who are already Patreon supporters of mine. You guys are the ones who actually make me doing these shows even possible. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, I'm going to open up my Twitter board. This is one of my favorite parts of the show, going to see what you guys are talking about live. And let's get to the first one. And the first tweet from you guys who are watching live right now comes to us from Sev Fernando, who writes, John, should someone in WB get fired? Oh yeah, there are people who are going to lose their jobs. Make no mistake about it. There's going to be some personnel changeover. Absolutely. Here's the thing though. As far as Geoff Johns goes, look, I know this is an unpopular opinion, and hear me out on this. I have been one of the few people that have said from the beginning, I did not like the appointment of Geoff Johns. Geoff Johns is not a movie guy. He's not. He is a brilliant comic book guy, but the comic book medium and how stories come across well on a comic book page is very different from a movie. So I was one of the few people who I did not like his appointment to that position in Warner Brothers. But that being said, you cannot blame this on Geoff Johns, because like by the time he took over the position, the wheels of Justice League were already in motion. Really, I don't think we can start evaluating the type of influence, positive or negative, that Geoff Johns is having on the DCEU until Aquaman. Because, like I said, the motion of Justice League was that all that stuff, a lot of the pieces were already in place. A lot of the engine that was going to make Justice League go was already in place and running by the time he took over that position. So I don't really think we've entered a period of time yet where we can point to Geoff Johns and say, this is his fault. I don't think that's fair. I think the first time we're going to get a sense of the influence that Geoff Johns as an executive has is once we see Aquaman and then possibly Wonder Woman 2. Those are the films that will really get a sense for what kind of influence is Geoff Johns having on it. I honestly just don't think, because I know you're thinking, John, what are you talking about? Geoff Johns was, he got hired like over a year ago or however long ago it was. Yes, that's true. But the cast was already in place. Zack Snyder was already in place. All these things that made Justice League what it is were already in place. So you can't really point the finger to him for all of this. Even though I'm the guy who says I wasn't happy with Geoff Johns getting this position in the first place, but I'll be the first one to stand up and say you cannot blame this on him. Let's give him a chance. We got to wait and see until Aquaman. We got to wait and see till Wonder Woman 2 to see what kind of hand he really does have in all this and what his influence is going to be like. And until that happens, we can't really tell. But yeah, make no mistake. There are going to be personnel shakeups over this thing. There absolutely will be. Okay, let's see. This one comes to us from Cooler575, writes, Justice League is epic. Replace the marketing CEO. Marketing trailers and merchandise better. Keep the current DCEU alive. That's great. But look, the cinema score, the only true audience score is cinema score. Ignore IMDb, ignore Rotten Tomatoes audience score. The only true audience score is cinema score, because cinema score is the only one that verifies that the people they're taking the questions from or that they're asking about the movie actually saw the movie. Rotten Tomatoes audience score and IMDb is just flooded with tens and hundreds of thousands of people who haven't even seen the movie. But the cinema score of Justice League is, even though I liked it and I went to go see it for a fifth time last night, the reality is it has the same audience score as 50 Shades Darker. It has the same audience score as Baywatch. It has a worse audience score than My Little Pony. It has a worse audience score than Daddy's Home 2. So, no, it's not just the marketing. And I have my issues with the marketing for Justice League. I do. I think they botched the marketing in a number of ways. They put out some really fun, great trailers, but overall, they botched the marketing campaign because of a couple of big defects I think they had in their strategy. And I'll talk about those another time. But, it's keeping the DCEU alive it wasn't just a marketing thing. Even the people who saw it were not thrilled with it. Some of us were. Some of you were. I know a lot of people who did like it a lot. But, remember I was saying the other night I was in one of the audience where everybody's cheering and yelling watching Justice League? That wasn't the audience last night that I was in. Me and my buddy Soul, we were giggling and laughing through it, but there wasn't a lot of people outwardly having a great time watching Justice League last night. And it's, again, I've been in a theater where the whole audience was cheering and hooping and hollering. And then I've had experiences like last night where it's just Everybody, the credits start rolling. Everybody quietly got up and walked out. So, I mean, let's not pretend like the only problem with the DCEU right now is the marketing. Marketing is an issue, but let's not pretend that's the only issue. Let's see. This one comes to us from Matt Light 19, who writes, John, I really like Justice League, but hearing the behind-the-scenes stuff makes me upset with Warner Brothers. Look, every movie has behind-the-scenes drama, right? Here's the point, though. When a movie is successful and does well and the audience likes it and the critics like it, nobody cares about the behind-the-scenes drama. There's a sports analogy, you hear me use it all the time. It's called winning solves everything. Like, every sports team has its drama, its behind-the-scenes conflicts, all this kind of stuff. But guess what? When you win, none of that matters. Nobody cares. And everybody just forgets about the problems because you're winning. Winning solves everything. But when you lose in sports, suddenly the newspapers and the fans start pointing at the little problems and they start complaining about this guy doing this and that guy doing that. And you highlight that, oh, we heard this guy didn't like the way the other guy was talking to his wife at a team function. We hear about all these problems. But when a team is winning, you very rarely hear about any of that because winning solves everything. And I think the same is true with Warner Brothers and things that are going on there with that. And listen, it's also a mistake that the audience, our default position is usually, if there's ever a problem, it's the studio's fault. The reality, though, is that's often not the case. Sometimes it is the case. Maybe even more than half the time it's the case. But there are many times when that is not the case. But that is our, we as human beings want to blame it on the man. Everything's the man's fault. Nothing's our fault. Nothing's the individual's fault. Nothing's the artist's fault. Everything's the man's fault. But quite often, there are two sides to the story, and quite often the studio is in the right. Half the time, maybe more than half the time, the studio is in the wrong. But look, again, we're only talking about the behind-the-scenes drama, all these little problems, because they're losing. If the team was winning, we wouldn't be worrying about any of this stuff. Anyway, that's just kind of the way I see it. And maybe I'm dead wrong. All right, the next question comes to us from Spider-Matt2, who writes, John, do you think Hollywood should adapt video games as TV shows instead of movies? Nope, totally don't. Because the problems that we're seeing would just get carried over into a television series, and those would just be exasperated. If you can't tell a good short story, aka a movie, if you can't tell a good short story, why should we trust somebody to tell a long form story? A 26 episode arc over 2 seasons. If you can't even handle making a good 2-hour story or 2.5 hour story, why should we as fans believe that, they do a great job with a 13-hour story? No, show me first that this industry can create good stories based on video game material in a 2-hour window. Show me that you can do it and do it successfully. Then I'll start as a fan thinking about longer form stories. But until you can do that, I don't have a lot of faith. But we'll have to see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're perfectly right on that. Let's see. All right, next one comes to us from Nathan Vander, who writes, worst comic book movie of the last 3 years? I'd have to even try to remember what the comic book movies of the last 3 years were. I wasn't a big fan of X-Men Apocalypse. I'd have to think about it. Fantastic Four is going to be one that quickly comes to mind. I'd have to have a list of all the movies that came out the last few years to really know that off the top of my head. All right, the next one comes to us from 3Q Social, who writes, John, any chance Justice League makes up its losses over the long Thanksgiving weekend? No, I think it's going to get crushed by Coco. I think Justice League is going to get crushed by Coco. And unfortunately, again, the word of mouth is not that positive. The critic scores are hammering it. I don't see any reason for us to believe that Justice League is going to take anything less than a 60% drop. I think the fact that it's a long Thanksgiving weekend could help a little bit. That could help a little bit, but I don't think it's going to help enough. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong about that. But I think we're going to see Justice League take a very significant drop going into week 2. Part of that because of Coco. Part of that because of the fact that it's not getting the overwhelmingly positive audience responses we were hoping it would get. It's not getting the overall positive responses from the critics that we were hoping it would get. There's nothing there to suggest that Justice League is going to make some kind of week 2 surge. Like, I don't see any data in front of me that would lead me to believe that that's a possibility. But hey, fingers crossed, man. Let's hope. Let's hope. Let's see. Next one. This one comes to us from C. Martinez Art, who writes, John, could ticket price and prioritizing films, Thor, Star Wars, also be hurting Justice League? Well, again, if ticket prices were hurting Justice League, then ticket prices should have hurt Wonder Woman, Logan, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Thor Ragnarok. But instead, all of those films were on upward trajectories. So if ticket prices didn't hurt those, and it wasn't an issue for those, and those films were hitting records, then you can't say suddenly, but it's a problem for this movie. As far as like Star Wars or Thor goes, Star Wars, in movie period time, Star Wars is still an eternity away. Still an eternity away. And Thor Ragnarok only made $21 million this weekend. So it's not like Thor Ragnarok wasn't even the number 2 film. What was the number 2 film? It made $27 million. I can't remember off the top of my head which it was. It was one of the dramas or something like that. Anyway, another film came in second, made $27 million. That was a bigger influence on Justice League's box office than Thor was. Thor just made 20. It's not like Thor made $85 million in its third week and that hurt Justice League. It made $21 million, which is what you should expect some other film to make when you open up. So I honestly don't think, I could be wrong. There could be a study out there that shows that I'm dead wrong about that. But my first gut feeling is that I don't think that had anything to do with it. Let's see. I can't take the next tweet because the next tweet gives away a spoiler of Justice League, which I don't want to do yet. Let's see. This one comes to us from Al Giordano 3737 writes, John, thoughts on some people saying that the Lord of the Rings Amazon show is too ambitious to succeed. Says who? According to what? According to what? It's just telling a story. How is it too ambitious? Look, if they came out and said they're going to do the Silmarillion, then I'd go, okay, look, that might be much. But they're creating new content. And they're just going to tell their story. Look, if you can do Game of Thrones, if you can do Breaking Bad, oh my God, if you can do Battlestar Galactica, you can do a Lord of the Rings series. It is not too ambitious. It's got the support of the Tolkien estate behind it. They've got the support of Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema behind it. And you've got all these mass resources of Amazon behind it. It is not too ambitious at all. The show may come out and it may suck. Sure. But 3 out of every new shows that come out suck, right? It's not because they're too ambitious. So no, I don't see, with all the types of television that people are doing now and types of movies they're doing now, to suggest that a Lord of the Rings show, especially understanding that it's going to take prior, it's not Lord of the Rings retold in television show format. These are events that precede Lord of the Rings. It's new stories. All right? It's new stories. And if they can do Battlestar Galactica, and if they can do Game of Thrones, and if they can do all these other types of shows, I really don't see why a Lord of the Rings show that's telling new stories written for television have to be considered too ambitious. I think they'll be fine. Let's see this. So it says, from rdrago66, John, how would have thought it, a hard R film, would make more money opening weekend than Justice League? Yeah. There's a lot of movies that we can go, like, who would have thought? And certainly not me. I admit it. I did not think Thor Ragnarok was going to make more money on its opening weekend than Justice League. I'll put my hand up and say I was wrong about that. Can't imagine that. Let's see. This next one comes to us from To Be Punished, who writes, John, you can reboot without recasting Wonder Woman, or they could break off the DCU into 2 distinct continuities. 2 distinct continuities in the movie universe. Like, it's one thing to have 2 different continuities in the television world and in the movie world. That's fine. But to have 2 different continuities going in the movie world, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it feels a little bit convoluted to me. I don't think that works. And I also don't think you just reboot and not recast roles. You definitely recast roles. You absolutely recast roles. Let's see. Where did it go? Here we go here. Let's see. Jojo890152 writes, John, any chance we can see you do some live trailer reactions? Honestly, other than day one, which is these YouTube reactors who if you follow me on social media, you know I've talked about these guys before. There's another name they go by, but I just know them as Day One. But anyway, other than those guys, I think trailer reactions are actually really dumb, because I think for the most part, and I've done them, and the more I've done them, the more I'm starting to think this, is that trailer reactions are, for the most part, they're really faked. Half the time, the guys have watched the trailer first. And those who don't, they know I've seen people, I'm not going to name names, but I've seen people watch trailers for the first time. And then I've watched those people do trailer reactions. It's like, that's not how they act when they see a trailer for the first time. And for me, like, if I'm watching a trailer, I'm watching the trailer. I'll go, whoa. Oh, wow, that's cool. Wow, and maybe I'll smile once or twice, but it's like, what's the point of that? I mean, what's the point of that? I just feel too much like, and I've done them a few times, and so I thought maybe it would be different, but I've done them a few times, and I've realized I've done them. I feel like, even if I'm not trying to, I feel like I'm faking it. I feel like I got to put on a show because people are watching me watch a trailer. And it's like, So, hey, like I said, there are one or two trailer reactors out there that I watch and I go, oh my God, these guys are so entertaining to watch. And I don't even care if they're faking it because it's just so damn entertaining. But like, there are some things I'm good at in life, some things. Being an entertainer is not one of them. I'm not an entertainer. I mean, I have a huge amount of respect for people who are great entertainers. It's amazing they can do what they do. I'm not an entertainer. I wish I was, but I just don't see much point of me doing live trailer reactions. What's the point? Like, you're just going to see me make some facial expressions and ooh and ah once or twice? I mean, I'm not particularly gifted at that, so I doubt it. Let's put it that way. I doubt it. But thanks a lot for the question, man. Let's see. This one comes to us from NJ Vidvaldi, who writes, John, everybody loves the characters in the DC universe. Move forward and get better writers. No, they do not. Not everybody loves the characters. Sorry. Maybe people in your sphere, maybe people in my sphere. But when you step back objectively and you look at the real cinema scores and you look at the real responses we're getting from people, no, I'm sorry. This isn't a subjective question. You're wrong. Not everybody loves what we love. Okay? I've gone to see Justice League now 5 times. In the next couple of days, I will probably go see it a 6th time. I like it that much. But that doesn't mean I delude myself into making these things that everybody thinks the way I think. No, they don't. They don't. There are a lot of us who do, and there's a bunch of people who don't. Because if people did love the characters and love the way they were being portrayed, more of them would come out to the theater. I mean, it's just kind of the way I see it. Let's see. Let's just take 2 more here. Here we go. Pimp Minimal Style 1 writes, John, should the writers of the animated DC movies do the live action movies? Oh, fuck no. Fuck no. No. I feel like that Michael Scott meme. No! God, no! No. Those are great. Look, for the most part, I think the animated stuff sucks. Both Marvel's and DC's. And both Marvel and DC, Marvel's got that Doctor Strange movie, which I thought was pretty cool. I think the Wonder Woman origin one, the animated one that DC did. Obviously, if you go back to the older DC stuff, like Mask of the Phantasm was good, but they worked great for little animated things. But really, if you look at them, if these were live action, they would come across as really thin and pathetic. So, God, no. I think they are written beautifully for what they are. The little animated films. They're written perfectly for that. I couldn't do that. I mean, the people who write them are incredibly talented and gifted for doing that. But do not confuse those animated films with what would work in a live action big screen environment. I just don't see them. And I'm not talking about animation purely. I mean, you look at the way those Marvel animated films and those DC animated films are written, and they're made for children for the most part. They're made for kids, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know. I think I'm in the minority on this. I know I'm in the minority of this, and the way I'm saying it, I hope it doesn't come across as offensive to those of you who do like those things, because I celebrate. If you love those cartoons, hell, I still watch the Star Blazers, Space Battleship Yamato cartoons. I watch Star Wars Rebels. I watch a lot of animated stuff, so I certainly don't want to come across like I'm poo-pooing on anybody who watches those animated things. Not at all. If you like those things, that's awesome. I got lots of stuff that I would call childish that I watch and participate in and love too, but it just doesn't mean everything. So I certainly don't want to come across like I'm poo-pooing on you if you love that stuff, because that's awesome. That's great. But do I think there's an apples to apples comparison to getting the types of movies that they on purpose, the way they purposely make those animated things that are mainly targeted at kids? Do I think that should just be brought over and make them do the actual Justice League movie? No. That's just my personal opinion. I really don't. I don't want that. And anyway, that's just my thought. All right, guys, now that I've just about offended everybody out there, I'm going to call it a day on today's show. My apologies again if I came across too strong. I certainly don't, again, I don't mean to offend if you are somebody who loves those movies. I celebrate that if you love that stuff. I really do. It's just, if I'm going to be honest about my opinion of it, I don't like them. I don't like them, either from Marvel or DC. There are exceptions. Dark Knight Returns, certainly exception. Mask of the Phantasm, that Doctor Strange one. There are exceptions. But for the most part, I don't like them. And I kind of dug Flashpoint too. I did. I kind of dug Flashpoint. Anyway, that'll do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, don't forget, click that thumbs up button. Leave a comment and a thought in the comments section below. Let me know about what you think Justice League and the DCU and Warner Brothers should do next with all that kind of stuff. What do you think about the Quiet Place trailer? What do you think about Vince Vaughn? Comment on any or all the topics we discussed here today. Remember, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all fans of all this kind of stuff together. We come at it with different points of view, but that's the fun thing about being a film fan, is that we can be on the same team together and debate and discuss and still like one another. That's the beautiful thing about being a part of the film fan community. So be a part of that, guys. Anyway, guys, that will do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.